ecosystem as far as the ecosystem on this earth, the average temperature of 15 degrees, it has fluctuated many times. But the average temperature is what the average temperature we take is the last from average for 1960 to 1990 average, and that is 15 degree, and from 15 degree it changed, or you can say that in Fahrenheit plus 15 to minus 10. That change has occurred with the time, and because of changing CO2 concentration on this earth. The concentration on the earth has changed because of different geological processes, and that CO2 concentration change brought up the temperature changes. And not only, I will explain, not only the internal processes of CO2 concentration, the external processes. For example, how sun and earth is distanced at different time periods, that has also affected the temperature on the earth. And other than that, what is happening on the sun, like sun flares, another sun flare is going to happen in a few days, that is going to give some kind of radiations to the earth. So such things would have created situations such that temperature of the planet earth has changed, and that change in temperature has been measured. For example, instrumentation, using instrumentation for last 50 years or so. But before that, those evidences come from the rocks, the sediments, and geologists analyze those sediments and the fossils in those sediments, microfossils to megafossils in those sediments, whether it is marine sediments or continental sediments, and that help to understand the how the biology evolved on this earth, and as well as how the temperature and climate, rain rain changed through time in geological time scale. And geologists have found that the temperature has gone up. For example, in Cambrian or so, the temperature was very high, then it has gone down, up and down, up and down. There was one time, early Eocene optimum, the Paleocene, Eocene period, very high temperature, then it has gone down, down. And the recently, as far as geological time, it was very low during the last glacial maxima. There is Pleistocene, there was Pleistocene glaciers, and see, there are different scales. So in this scale, you see, there are break-in scales so that we can visualize the recent periods more with higher resolution. You see, temperature has gone and up and down so many times. Temperature has gone down, down, and then up and down. Then the least temperature was at LGM around 20,000 years ago, after the Pleistocene glaciation. Again, it was increasing, and then by this time, it is increasing, and this is the projection of 2050 and 22,100. So this is the picture showing how the temperature has changed on this Earth at different time scales, and we had cold and warm, all kinds of conditions on this Earth. And to tell you, for example, there were time between 600 to 7 million years ago, the whole Earth was frozen, and that Earth was given name as snowball Earth. At that time, whole Earth was, for example, here, whole Earth was a sludge kind of thing. Even the equator part of the Earth was sludge. The ocean was like a sludge, and it was so cold. And even when at that time, the continents which were located on the equator, they were also frozen. And because of that, lots of tillites. Tillites are the rocks containing big boulders eroded by, for example, here, these two people who have given the idea of frozen Earth, snowball Earth. So even these tillites occurred at the time on the continents which were on the in the equator. Presently, it is all they're only found on poles or the Himalayas, the third pole. It is named third pole also. So these kind of rocks, glaciated rocks, are found near the glaciers. But these rocks were found and dated at for the time of 600, 700 million years, and also using paleomagnetic mapping, they have found that these rocks were deposited on the equator. How come at equator such kind of glaciated rocks are found? So they arrived that there were a time when whole Earth was glaciated, and it was the snowball Earth. And after these tillites, you have carbonate rocks. This carbonate rock deposit during the warmer condition, the warmer condition returned, and we have carbonate deposits in the ocean. So this is the earliest cold conditions on this Earth. And they have found that at that time, the sun was faint. Because of the less radiation from the sun at that time. Now also, because of tectonic activities, I will explain, there are high weathering conditions, exposure of rocks, broken rocks, so that CO2 was consumed during weathering, and because of less concentration of CO2, the Earth entered into snowball. So that is the earliest cold conditions, and the Earth returned to warmer condition. And this is the period when this is the recent condition. For example, during the last glacial maxima 20,000 years ago, when the snow was distributed like this. For today, these things have retreated. Even now, only some part of Greenland and Antarctica and Arctic, we have frozen condition. Otherwise, whole US, Europe, Canada is devoid of frozen condition. Although we have snowfall and others, but the glaciation condition is retreated after 20,000 years, and we are into the present warm condition. As I explained, the cold and warm conditions, the reason for cold and warm condition, the one reason is how the Earth is situated with respect to sun. And that respective distance or angle of rotation change with time. There is a cyclicity, and that is called Milankovitch cyclicity. And in that way, there are three ways this happens. One is eccentricity. This is the plane, and sun is there. Earth changes its position with respect to sun in 100,000 year cycle. So this is one position, and that is one position. Now it is not circular, rather elliptical position on which Earth is rotating around the sun. Other thing is obliquity or tilt of the axis of rotation, and that is now 23.5, but it changes from 22 degree to 24.5 degrees, and accordingly the shadows with the sun changes, and therefore there is a cyclicity in the climate. And another thing is precision. The axis itself wobble in the 23,000 year cycle, and the situation with the sun, the location with the sun changes, and therefore we have different cyclicity, eccentricity, obliquity, and precision. These cyclicities, when they in a permutation combination basis, when all three matches, there is a cold condition, and in between we have temperature changes. So externally, these things, Milankovitch cycle, control the climatic setup on this Earth. And internally, the plate tectonic processes, the movement of, or the wandering of poles or continental drifting control. Where are those at different time scale? Where are those continents are occurring, and how different rocks are formed because of collision of continents, or separation of continents, whether and those collision or separation lines are called boundaries, those continental boundaries, or whether they're converging, for example here, or they are diverging. For example, it is on mid-ocean ridges. What type of rocks are formed on these different boundaries, and how different continents have moved from different positions because of this continental drifting, tectonic activities. These things always control the climate of the Earth. This is for the last 100 or so million years, how the continents have moved, and this is the present condition. See, the Earth has moved. Our Indian continent, subcontinent moved. It has gone through equator, and now we have. So when Earth was moving through equator, it has different type of climate. But now we have Himalayas on the northernmost tip of the India. It is now, and because of mountain activities, the height, the altitude of that position increased, and so that we have a third pole on this Earth. This is the present setup in which different boundaries are seen. Present position, and therefore we have different rock mountains. These are convergent zones. We have mountains here, also collision. Because of collision of, we have Himalayas, we have valleys, we have ocean basins. So this is the present setup created by the plate tectonic activity, and the position of continent decides what type of climate will be there. For example, towards the pole, we have lower temperature, and towards the equator, we have higher temperature. And accordingly, we have different weathering conditions. So these internal process, plate tectonic process, not only decide the setup, it also decides how much CO2 is there in the atmosphere. CO2 originate from the geological processes by magmatic processes. When magma comes out through the by the sea floor spreading at mid-ocean regions at the divergent boundary, it also exhales CO2, H2O, water, and other vapors, other gases, SO2, etc. So these magma, which is coming from mantle, also exude these gases. And in geological time, when these gases were exhaled, are spewed out by magma processes, the CO2 increased. And CO2, H2, and other gases were brought up to the outer sphere, the lithosphere. And then, therefore, we had the origin of atmosphere and hydrosphere occurred on this earth. The origin of these gases is only the magmatic processes and connected with the plate tectonic processes. So the source of CO2 is magma processes, whether it is subduction zones, continental arc, CO2 degassing, or carbonate metamorphism. The rocks containing carbonate, when they subduct and they get metamorphosed, CO2 is exhaled. So CO2 sources at plate boundaries through volcanism and plate boundaries has originated atmosphere, not only atmosphere, but also hydrosphere, and therefore the present CO2 and other gases in the atmosphere. However, since 500 million years or so, or before, during the Precambrian, since when the photosynthesis started, the CO2 has been used for the photosynthesis, and we have oxygen increased. And this increase in oxygen subsequent to microbes, we have land plants. Now, after the land plants, we have different animals which thrive on oxygen, including human beings today. So this CO2 was one way used by the photosynthesis process by plants, so that increased CO2 has been brought down. And second way, the tectonic processes and the tectonic process also control erosional processes, the physical weathering processes, and therefore chemical weathering processes. And by these processes, the continuous supply of CO2 is brought down. The one way is photosynthesis. Second way is by weathering process. And this weathering process includes both physical breakdown and chemical alteration of rocks at the Earth's surface. And in this process, the minerals which formed at high temperature below the surface in the magma chamber, or magma coming out as volcanoes, they solidify and they create different type of rocks. When these rocks comes out to the surface, they cannot sustain at, for example, around 15 degrees centigrade of temperature, because they are formed at 500 degrees centigrade or more than that. So what happens, to be in equilibrium with the present condition, the ambient condition, they break down. They convert themselves, they alter themselves so that they can sustain on the earth. These minerals rock forming minerals break down by weathering. They form other secondary minerals, clay minerals and other minerals. And those clay minerals are, they can sustain easily on the surface conditions. It is very similar to, I always give an example. When we are brought up in our social system, our language and literature, for example, southern part of India, another, we speak Hindi, we speak Tamil. But when we are sent to USA or Japan for the study, we change ourselves. We start speaking that language wherever we are sent. If we are in Japan, we start speaking Japanese. We also change to some extent. Many people like eating Chinese food, but still they change to Chinese, or they change to eating pizzas or whatsoever there in USA or Italy. So that change is required to sustain themselves. Otherwise, we will starve. We will not, if we will not eat the food available there. We have to eat. We have to speak their languages. So we equilibrate to those conditions by speaking, by eating their food, adopting their food, or we cannot be there in dhoti kurta or lungi kurta. We have to wear coat and suit, etc. So we change ourselves to sustain such conditions. Similarly, rocks also start speaking surface conditions and to sustain the surface temperature and climatic conditions. So they change. That is called weathering. So weathering is very important for the differentiation of rock. And this differentiation breaks down the minerals into different compounds, different ions, and therefore they are used by the biogeochemical cycling for the nutrient supply, for the plant's growth, and many other things, to decide the chemistry of water, the chemistry of soil for fertility, and therefore this biogeochemical cycle is very important. This weathering is very important for the sustenance of life on this earth. And this weathering occurs from micro nano scale to continental scale. In the continental scale, you see mountains are getting weathered, soil profile are formed. And when the mountains weathering is seen by the chemistry of river water, so river water chemistry is decided by what kind of weathering occurs, what is the climatic setup, what is the forest ecological system setup, and therefore the kind of weathering, the kind of leaching, and accordingly the kind of sediment and water is decided. The Himalayas, the kind of rocks existing in Himalayas decides the chemistry of sediments and water. The rocks which are in Himalaya are very good in the sense they supply fertile soils in the Ganga plain. So Ganga plain fertility is connected to weathering in the Himalayas. At the local scale, we see weathering in soil profile. Even if you go to hand specimen scale, you see rubbles half weathered, and or you will see some of the parts are weathered, highly weatherable part, minerals are weathered, and less weatherable are intact, and so on, so forth to the nano scale. At each scale, weathering occurs. So the weathering is very important. It occurs at all scales. It makes sediments and soils. And these sediments and soils, when they are transported, eroded, they make landforms like for floodplains, or in the floodplains, farmlands of Punjab and Haryana. And these farmlands provide us food, fiber, fertilizer, nutrients, and fuel, everything, whether it is geologically created fuels, petroleum or coal, that is again supported by nutrients from the continents, weathering on continents.
That's fine. Go to other schools, that's fine.
Somebody is, hello?
Sir, we have muted her. Please continue.
Okay, sir. Okay. How much time is left?
Sir, almost 30 minutes more, sir.
Okay, okay. So, weathering is the process which makes sedimental soil, which makes farmlands, and farmland supply everything for us, for our sustenance, not only humankind, but all kind of life, provides niche and platform for the life, store waters on land and make rivers to flow. See, even when the monolithic, a massive rock cannot store water, if it is weathered, if it is porous and pervious, then only it can. So weathering make rocks into porous and pervious, and therefore it can store water, groundwater, and that groundwater flows to rivers, and rivers flow ephemerally or continuously. It provides for photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is an important process, but for photosynthesis, plants also require nutrients. Photosynthesis doesn't occur without other nutrients. So it provides for photosynthesis. And again, photosynthesis is important for CO2 sequestration. Uses and degrade Earth's energy through photosynthesis. Energy is used, and otherwise, if forest is not there, the Earth's temperature, wherever there is no forest, temperature is higher, you can see. And wherever there are forest system, you have less temperature. The system works in like that. It degrades Earth's energy, which is received from the sun. Controls air chemistry and therefore climate. I will explain how the CO2 is consumed, therefore air chemistry is controlled and the climate is controlled. It controls water chemistry and therefore ecosystem. I have explained. It cleans water and air, makes mineral deposits, building material, everything. So these rock weathering makes sediments, and the sediments can be made to bricks. It also makes for example, building material. Many sandstones are very much used. That is product of weathering, building material. Cement, building material. That is product of weathering. Calcium is leached out from the minerals and deposited at limestone. Limestone is used for different purposes and makes mineral deposits. See, most important mineral deposits: iron ore deposit, coal deposit, aluminum deposit. All are the, see, aluminum and iron is directly related to weathering process. Iron is leached out from the continental weathering, and that is supplied to the ocean when oxygen was not much there in Precambrian, and it was dissolved at Fe2 plus ion in reduced condition. When oxygen increased, everything which was supplied from the continent to the sea, that converted to oxide, iron oxides, and at that time these iron deposits formed, and the iron which we use as ore, that has formed around 1800 million years ago. Think how much back it was formed. It is not forming now, but it formed. Similarly, aluminum deposit that formed because of weathering of aluminum bearing rocks. How important is aluminum and iron in this technological era? So And coal and petroleum, again, I have said that is product of weathering, by weathering nutrient supply, therefore biota, and that biota converted to these two kind of deposits. So all critical earth resources, air, water, soil, land, climate, are sustained by rock weathering processes. So climate is sustained by rock weathering process. The factors which control rock weathering is what the rock type, the rock structure, the slope, the climate, and time. You see, most of all of these ultimately is controlled by plate tectonics. Where the rocks are formed, what type of magma will be generated, and therefore rocks, what type of metamorphism or mountain building process will occur, so that rock structure will be affected. Slope, mountains, if mountains will form, then there'll be slope, high slope, increased mechanical weathering, physical weathering occur. And according, as I explained, climate, where the continent, what is the altitude at that continent is decided by continental drifting, and then mountain building processes, the climate, and the time, longer the time, more weathering. So these are different setup. So here at mid-ocean, these basalts are formed. Here at subduction zones, granites are formed. So these two different rocks formed at different plate tectonic setup, at different temperature condition. Okay, basalts are formed at high temperature here. Granites are formed at low temperature here. And therefore, we have at different temperatures, different minerals. Okay, for example, basalts or equivalent rock is gabbro. It is deep-seated rock. When it comes to surface, it is called, chemically they are the same, but when they come up, according to the, some of them quench suddenly, some of them crystallize very slowly. Accordingly, the minerals are there. So the basalt and equivalent gabbro, they have pyroxene and calcium-rich minerals at higher temperature. Okay. Whereas we have intermediate rocks and then granite and rhyolite. See, because of slow cooling, bigger grains are formed. These are granites. And you see, these rocks are formed, which has quartz and biotite and potassium sulfur. And okay, so these rocks which form at lower temperature, and see that the present temperature is 50, surface temperature is 15 degrees, 500 degrees centigrade to 15 degrees centigrade difference is less than the, for example, 1000 or 1200 degrees centigrade to 15. So the more the difference, weatherability will be more. So basalt or gabbro will weather faster than the granite or rhyolite. Okay, these minerals, potassium, sulfur, or quartz. See, if you see the weatherability, quartz is least weatherable. Then muscovite or biotite. If you see the channel sands of river Ganga or Yamuna or many rivers, you'll find most of them are quartz. White is quartz and black is white. Black is biotite and white is mica. They're less weatherable because they have formed at low temperatures. So from the less weather, and whatever the mineral which formed at high temperature, they got weathered out. So if you see temperature wise, the rocks are the minerals which form at high temperature, they are most weatherable, so on, so forth. The lower temperature rocks and minerals, granite is less weatherable. At the same time, these different rocks are more highly weatherable or less weatherable with respect to chemical and mineralogical composition. But the structure, the inhomogeneity, so these massive rocks are very less weatherable than their inhomogeneous counterparts. For example, the same rocks get folded, faulted by the tectonic processes or metamorphism. And these rocks are either because they are butchered by tectonic process in such a way In massive rock, water will run off. But these fractures, these inhomogeneities will allow the water to penetrate downward much more deeper and therefore much more effective for weathering. So structure also decides weatherability of rock. Not the massive rocks is less weatherable than the fractured or folded or butchered rocks. So climate-wise, see continental drifting poses the climate condition on this different climate where they are occurring. And you see, when there is, for example, equatorial conditions, for example, the hot and wet conditions, that supports more weathering. If you go to colder conditions, cold and dry conditions, for example, there are more mechanical weathering and less chemical weathering. Okay, then hot and dry conditions, again, less chemical weathering. So the climate setup is controlled by, again, the plate tectonics. You know that for all chemical reactions, you require warmer, high temperature. So high temperature and those reactions are mediated directly or indirectly by the water. So wet condition, so hot wet condition, like in southern part of India, Kerala, Western Ghats, Karnataka, we have high chemical weathering, strong chemical weathering. If you go to Himalayas, for example, such kind of, it is not actual, but from that there, but see such kind of weathering. But if you go to, it is from Western Ghats, you have thick laterite with deposits that you have soil and highly weathered rocks in the tropical conditions. So you have physical weathering, chemical weathering, three types of weathering. Physical or mechanical weathering includes frost wedging, crystal growth. These are basically, frost wedging is the water when penetrates into the cracks in the warmer condition, warm daytime, for example, the water percolates down into the fractures, and in the night they crystallize and therefore expand, and frost wedging occurs. Similarly, in the coastal regions, the salt crystals grow in the water, which percolated in the cracks. So these process exert pressure and breaks the rock into pieces. Accordingly, mechanical exfoliation, if upper part of the burden is taken out, the rock below expands and cracks develop and rocks break. Root penetration, big trees penetrate their roots into fractures and break the rock into pieces. Thermal expansion and contraction also, and similarly, abrasion processes, the flowing sediments into air when they collide with massive rocks or with each other at reason, physical weathering or mechanical weathering occurs. And this physical or mechanical weathering is important for providing more surface area for weathering, so that more surface area is available for the reactants, water and other reactants, acids, to be reacted. See, one piece, see, only 6 square units are available, but if you cut from all sides, more 6 planes are available, 2 here, 2 this side, and 2 this side. So the same volume, but you have developed more surface areas and so on and so forth like this. And by that way, more surface area is available, so more weathering. So by this process, for example, see here, the jointed rocks, it was a monolithic, massive homogeneous rocks. This was less weatherable, but because of these joints, water can penetrate down, microbes can also penetrate down, and the water entering into the fracture zones help more weathering, therefore fracturing and inhomogeneities, or physical weathering helps chemical weathering. And there are three types of chemical weathering. One is dissolution, when everything get dissolved. For example, sodium chloride, salt deposits, they're totally dissolved. For example, calcium carbonate, limestone deposits, they totally dissolve into ions. That is dissolution. But sometimes the rock weathers, it provides some dissolved part, solute, and some solid part, so that and in that way, that is called, I forgot the term, but congruent weathering and congruent incongruent. This is the dissolution. Total dissolution is congruent weathering, when everything goes into solution. And these processes, oxidation, hydrolysis, you have incongruent weathering. Some part will go to dissolve load, I mean solute phase, some solid phase will remain. And when in the solid phase, there will be oxidation, so that you see the rusted with the sediments in pinkish, yellowish, or reddish color. That is because of oxidation of iron. And this incongruent weathering or congruent weathering occurs because of availability of H plus ion, hydrogen ion, and that is acidity. If acid is there in the water, the medium, hydrolysis will occur. So these three important processes, and how this weathering process occur is explained by these chemical reactions. I don't know how many of you are from chemistry background, but it is very simple. So during any chemical weathering, you have reactants on one side. For example, in any chemical reaction, one side is reaction, other side is products. So in reactants, you have the important thing are the presence of CO2, H2O, O2, or H plus ion through organic or other inorganic compounds. The plant roots exudes H plus ion. When plant roots enter into rocks, they not only break the rock, they also exude H plus ion, so that rock weathers. The dead material also, when the litter, plant litter also degrade and produce so many kinds of organic acids. Microbes produce so many kinds of organic acids. The basic work of these acids to provide H plus ion. But here in nature, mainly CO2 and H2O, these aqueous components, they react with each other so that they make an acid that is called H2CO3, carbonic acid, and this carbonic acid breaks into H plus ion and bicarbonate ion, and this reaction is called carbonation. This carbonation reaction provides H plus ion. For example, if you take a mineral like CaSiO3, calcium silicate, this calcium silicate reacts with carbonic acid here, and H plus ion is provided to this. So calcium comes out of this silicate and it provides bicarbonate in silica. And this calcium goes to solution. Similarly, FeSiO3, if this FeSiO3 reacts in the similar way, Fe2 plus ion are generated, and these two, where SiO2 is solid phase. So, but not only that, this Fe2 plus, because it can get oxidized in the presence of oxygen, oxidation reaction occurs. So these are reactions which are carbonation and hydrolysis reaction, which occurs when there are silicate or aluminosilicate minerals. Otherwise, there is a dissolution when there is calcium carbonate. See, Most weathering process on the surface of this weathering of feldspars. Feldspars are silicates of potassium, sodium, and calcium. Aluminosilicate. This is one example, potassium aluminosilicate. And this weather in the similar way to provide K+ ion, bicarbonate ion, silicic acid, and this secondary weathering product. This is, all of this will go to solution, but this will remain as solid as clay mineral. And therefore, the products after weathering are mainly these solutes, which go to the water here, and clay minerals, and also hydroxides or oxides of aluminum and iron. So these are solid phases which remain in the soil or sediment, and residues which could not be very less weatherable or least weatherable minerals, for example, quartz and mica, they remain in the soil or sediment. Those are, so these three things are produced so that whole ecosystem is supported by these, whether it is water chemistry, whether it is soil or sediment fertility, everything is supported by these three products. So physical and chemical weathering, I have explained how it happens and how ultimately chemical weathering occurs. But if we have to see about the soil, what is it actually? As I have explained, there are three types of products. Not only, see, that support the soil. The physical and chemical weathering support the soil, but there is another thing which is added, that is organic part. Okay, so physical breakdown or compact rock into loose materials, physical weathering, chemical changes, both removal and addition of elements, chemical weathering, and on top of that, the pure chemistry, addition of organic matter. You can see this is a real picture taken by us. This was a monolithic rock. This was broken, like, see, this, and the remnants are here. And this rock was broken into pieces physically and then converted into clay minerals. Here you see this alloys part, and that supported microbes, that supported these grasses. And therefore, dead material later will become organic matter. And this organic matter with A and B, the C will make a fertile soil. And after some time, you will see plants, trees, and other biota. You have a forest ecosystem here. That, so withering support life system and therefore make soils. And I will explain how it controls climate. You have the birth of soil occur by this process, and then it controls the climate. See, weathering provides, such thing happens because of the forest ecosystem came into existence because of weathering and supply of nutrients. You see, other than nitrogen and carbon, most all other things, even the limiting nutrient phosphorus is not there. There won't be any plant. This phosphorus is not there. It limits the fertility of the soil. There, so this phosphorus is required by the weathering process, and then only plants can grow and they can do photosynthesis. So it is, so these things come only from iron, calcium, all kinds of, all the nutrients that have no gaseous form come through weathering process, and therefore control photosynthesis. Photosynthesis doesn't occur until plant is supported by these nutrients. See how it controls, how photosynthesis and weathering both controls both, controls the climate or heals the perturbations which has occurred or affected the climate, how these two processes controls and therefore heal the earth for climate changes. How the self-healing process occurs regarding climate. So this H2O plus CO2, H2CO3, I have already explained, and this H plus ion, which knocks out potassium from this mineral, okay, already explained in the previous slide, and this potassium and similar way phosphorus is generated by weathering process that is taken up by the plants, okay, and this plant photosynthesize, and during photosynthesis again, see here CO2 is consumed. Here CO2 is consumed, and then again during photosynthesis, similar reaction occurs, H2O plus CO2 photosynthesis, organic matter form. So here during silicate weathering, CO2 is consumed. During photosynthesis, this CO2 is consumed. See, when and made into particulate, it may return back to the, for example, when by the oxidation of this material, organic matter, this organic matter can again either be respired like us, we eat and then exhale CO2. This CO2 will be either used, some of the, or the organic matter is buried. If the same organic matter is buried under the sediments, it will not be oxidized. The litter of plant will not be oxidized. They will be covered by the sediments. Sediments again, product of weathering. So when this organic matter is covered by, I will explain in another slide. So this this weathering, in weathering CO2 is consumed, provides nutrients. These nutrients support photosynthesis, and this organic matter is formed. Both ways CO2 is consumed, and this is the self-healing process of the earth. And some of the CO2 may return to sea again, and that help weathering process, the cyclic process. So photosynthesis require nutrients, produce organic matter, and this is a kind of barter, natural barter feedback. So you see, there are two ways by which the organic matter helps the CO2 consumption, CO2 sequestration. When the photosynthesized material, organic matter, is transported by river to the ocean and they are buried, either they return to atmosphere again, or they are transported as organic matter and buried under the sea. So they leave out the system, the loop for oxidation and buried. And therefore, CO2 gets sequestered. So you see, this is organic loop, organic carbon loop. Within the carbon cycle, there are many loops. In this loop, you see photosynthesis, organic matter formation, burial, or oxidation, both. And this inorganic carbon cycle, the CO2 exhaled by magmatic processes through volcanoes, they help weathering, and therefore SiO2 or bicarbonate and calcium, they are transported by the rivers to the sea, and in the sea, this calcium and bicarbonate, see, when this calcium and bicarbonate or carbonates, they reach in the sea, they convert to carbonate ions and calcium carbonate. See, the corals, the mollusks, and the marine calcifiers in the sea, they take up this calcium, they make their own bodies. And when they die, and deposit on this marine basin, in the geological time scale, they make limestone deposits. So this CO2, by this way, is consumed and deposited as limestones, so that kept forever locked, so that the atmospheric CO2 doesn't increase. So these two processes I have explained here. How, for example, this is Himalayan mountain system, and we have forest ecosystem, CO2 plus H2O, organic matter. This organic matter is transported by the rivers and then reaches to sea in the Bengal basin. Okay, and in the Bengal basin, these organic matter is buried under the sediments. That is one way, and that is particulate organic matter and sediments. And the dissolved load, for example, calcium and bicarbonate, which comes with water as dissolved load, they precipitate, as I have explained, used by the biota, and deposit as carbonate and carbonate deposits. So the carbonate and organic carbon burial occurs, so that this process consumes CO2 from the atmosphere, and therefore increased drawdown. For example, the Himalayan mountain orogeny has helped in that way, consuming the CO2. By this process, this whole ecosystem is consuming CO2 as much as in the past. This has given last glacial maxima. Pleistocene. People suggest that the last glacial activity during Pleistocene occurred because of these processes. So this is one study. I will not. So lastly, this weathering process acts as natural thermostat. CO2, you all know that CO2 and H2 are global warming gases. But together, when they become H2CO3, that is used by weathering process, or when it is used by photosynthesis, that becomes organic matter. Both ways CO2 sequestration occurs, and here they become coolant. Like in air conditioner, you have coolant. When they react together and they enter into weathering and photosynthesis process, they become coolant. In such a way, they have weathering and photosynthesis both have cooling effect on this earth. So that act as natural. Okay, so this is the time period for the last 1,000 years. The temperature change in the departure in temperature from 15 degrees centigrade from the last 1,000 years. You see from this diagram, this is the last part here. Okay. So this has occurred. Here because the cyclicity, the temperature, you see the cyclicity like here, it has gone down, gone up. Now it should be going down, but rather going down, what is happening here? It is going up and up and up. is not. हिंदी में कहते हैं नीचे जाने का नाम ही नहीं ले रहा है ना? That should come down as per as the cyclicity which has been seen in the past. It has gone down, gone up, gone down, gone up, gone down, gone up. Be more resolved data, you see. So again, that should come down, but it is not coming down, rather going up because of more and more CO2 is given to the atmosphere. See what geologically, and this is famous name is given, the hockey stick diagram. See what the earth itself has done for the healing process. For example, the weathered sediments, see whether you take limestone deposits, as I have explained, so much CO2 is locked as limestone deposits. It is there everywhere in the Rajasthan, wherever as limestone deposits or in the marine basins. But what we are doing, we are taking up this limestone, making sediments, burning it, CO2 is exhumed. That is one thing, but most importantly, the coal and petroleum. Earth, see, the marine biota which died and buried, see, nutrients had come from weathering. And this marine biota have used up, they have flourished, they flourish in the ocean. When they die, they are buried under the sediments. Again, product of weathering, and buried organic matter with the time geologically converted to petroleum, gas and liquid and gas form, both form. And this is symbolic of what we are doing. We are taking it out. See, earth has buried it, locked it in the case. But what we are doing, we have opened the case and the lion has come out on the road and killing everybody. What the earth has done in the last 300 to 400 million years or 50 to 100 million years ago, they buried it, covered it, locked it. We are unlocking and taking it out. So lion is going to kill you. Secondly, the formation of coal. The peat was formed, the coal was formed, again buried under the sediment. What we are doing? We are taking the coal buried below, taking it out, burning it. Lion is out, CO2 is out, going to kill us. So what the earth is doing, self-healing, we are doing just opposite to that. Okay? We are doing just opposite to that. Earth is locking the enemy, CO2, but we are unlocking the enemy. And so earth has self-healing power. Earth has self-healing power. So many times temperature has gone up. It has gone down because of locking up this CO2 in the rock form or in the petroleum or in the coal form. So Earth's temperature goes up because of more solar radiation or differences between sinks and sources of carbon dioxide. And because of large igneous provinces, rocks, weatherable rocks produced by orogenic mountains process. So more CO2 is consumed. Therefore, lower atmospheric CO2 concentration occurred, and therefore cooling occurred. So symbolically, solar radiation and CO2 coming out and going down all are shown in this picture. So weathering is an important process where by weathering thermostat, climate is under control Okay. But what we are doing, just opposite to that, what we are hitting the earth on its self-healing process. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now it is the time to put forward your queries as well as engage in discussions. So please feel free to unmute yourselves, or you can post your queries in the chat box.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
So, okay, thank you, sir. Tripadi, sir, for your wonderful presentation. Sir, I'm audible?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, I am Vivek. I am from Kerala. And recently, my state and particularly the Western Ghat region faces witnessed several landslides. My question is that, is there any relationship between chemical weathering and the phenomena of landslide or landslip?
Physical weathering, yes.
No, chemical weathering. Is there any relationship between chemical weathering and landslide?
Yes. See, when chemical weathering occurs, it produces clays, clay minerals. And clay minerals are slippery. Although water is already there, water also creates pore pressures. Okay?
Yeah.
Pore pressures. But in the longer time scale, the clay minerals which are there in the pores, okay, that also expands. They're expandable. What type of clays are there? That is one thing. If they are expandable, they create pressures, and they are also, clay minerals are also slippery. So they help this process.
So the process of landslide.
Yes, yes.
It's the time of heavy rain. Yeah.
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 Heavy rain, when water enters to the pores, that is one way. Water itself create pore pressures. Second way, if clay minerals are there, by weathering, chemical weathering, see, water reaches there, it weathers rock, and that produces clay minerals.
Gravitational force is completely rupturing. Yeah, the wood rock is rupturing.
So chemically weathering, by chemical weathering, there are clay production, and clay production also helps landslide.
Okay, thank you, sir.
There is another question. Thank you, sir. There is another question in the chat box. It is by Anisa Iqbal Sabir, and it goes like this. How long would it take for Earth to repair itself? And the second question is, when did climate change start getting worse?
So one by one. First question is?
Sir, first question is, how long would it take for Earth to repair itself?
See, it is in million, 100,000 to million year. Cyclicity, you can see 100,000.
Oh, okay, sir. And
10,000 to 100,000. Since 20 million years, 20,000 years ago, if you see the cyclicity, for example, see 20, it has started here, 100,000 years, okay? So cyclicity gone down, gone up. So 20,000 years. So around 80,000. It is low, then gone up here, you see, one reason. So,
okay.
So it is not a constant thing. It ranges 100,000, 10 to 100,000 to million years. That is why it is called geological time, geological time scale. It is not like you do something today, you weather something today, and tomorrow there will be cooling effect. It's not like that. Okay? You see, million year cycle, many million year cycle here. But within that, you have smaller cycles. If you say this broadly, So few million years to few thousand years, few tens of thousand years. Okay.
Okay, sir. Thank you. And
Second question.
Second question goes like this, sir. When did climate change start getting worse?
See, start changing worse. It is a difficult question. It is a good question, but difficult question. See, Earth has varied. See, which is worse? See, at this time, some other biota were there, some other animals, some other plants were there. At this time, you see, humans are there. Humans were not here. With respect to which? What? As far as humans are concerned, see, it is worst after 1950 or so. Worse. See, worse we have to see. And with respect to whom? For dinosaurs. Okay, what was worse? It was an asteroid. It is very cold climate. So for asteroids, for dinosaurs, it was different. For us, it is different. Okay. For microbes, it is different. With respect to whom? And the moment they start getting extinct, that is the worst for something, and the survival. See, the fittest will survive. For the fittest, it is different. Okay. For not fit, it is different. Are you getting my point?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
With respect to what? See, so many creatures. See, we think we are most important. Okay. So for us, worse started after 1950 or so. Temperature is increasing and increasing and increasing. So worse, we are into worse. Our species in danger. So with respect to which species in danger? Going towards extinction. Worse for that. So for many animals which died because of this climate change, okay, worse has already reached for them. Okay. We are still, we have to see the worse, but we are towards the worse. Okay.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Are there any more questions? All right. Okay. Thank you. Professor Jayant, through his session on Earth's self-healing to climate changes through geological times, has beautifully, in a very lucid manner, explained the enormity of the universe and how significant mankind, how insignificant mankind is if you take a geological time scale in the respect of geological time scale. And how the universe and the earth and all that is in it is continuously changing. And he explained various processes like the movement of tectonic plates, weathering, etc. And I am sure that it has helped us to understand the multiple interactions and consequences of these physical processes and how all of this helps to sustain life on Earth. And Sir emphasized on how Earth has the innate ability to self-heal, to sequester carbon dioxide, but how we are undoing all of the hard work that Earth has done till now. So it was indeed a thought-provoking session, and I think what Sir has told us, what Sir has taught us, will help us to take things in a new perspective and